Hi everyone, Danny here, and welcome to Spenelli Speaks and another Friday Reads. My apologies, I know I've been absent the last 2 weeks, but I promise I have been reading. I'm not going to talk about everything I've been reading this week. Feel free to jump over to my Goodreads. Everything is listed there, up to date when I start and finish those books. The first couple that I'm going to discuss with you today are a few graphic novels that were recommended to me. The first being Lightfall. This is The Girl and the Galdurian. So this follows Bee, who is the little girl, and Caddie, who is the Galdurian. Bee and her granddad were or are the keepers of the flame. And we find out that the flame is associated with the sun, and it has a lot of legend attached to it, including these Galdurians. And Bee's granddad, who's a pig and a wizard, doesn't have a very good memory, disappears on a little quest, and she gets worried. So she goes on her own quest to find him, runs into Caddie, and everything kind of goes from there. I did rate this 2 stars, not to say that it was bad, but I just felt like it was okay. I think the illustrations are great. The characters are great, but I just didn't feel like there was enough story in this, and maybe that's just me, but it just felt a little lacking. I will continue in reading this, so I got this from my library. I'll put a request in for the second in the series. But I just felt like, for me, reading this one, it did not take me long at all because there just wasn't a lot there. I feel bad for saying that because it was good, but it was just okay for me. So that's the first graphic novel that I read. The second was also a recommendation, and that was The Moth Keeper. This was a recommendation from my friend Mary, and I believe her friend Kristen, and I'll link the channels in the description below, because they talked about it in there. I think every Thursday they do a podcast style discussion, and it's all usually graphic novels. So I'll link that in the description, but they were talking about this graphic novel, and this was ages ago. This is how long it takes me. So anytime you recommend something to me, I always hide it away somewhere, and then it'll pop up somewhere in between. But this is from the same author of that Tea Society. What is it called? The Tea Dragon Society and the Tea Dragon Festival, the Tea Dragon Tapestry. Those almost children's books, which are lovely if you haven't read those. But this is Kay O'Neill. And this is a lovely graphic novel. I did rate it 3 stars. This is about Anya, who is the Moth Keeper. Her and her village are in the village of night, so they are really keepers of the night. And it's really about finding your place and appreciating the things that are around you and appreciating what the night has to offer and what the day has to offer and how they work in tandem together. It was a lovely story. I think the illustrations were really great, very reminiscent of those Tea Dragon books, and just a lovely story. So that was, again, 3 stars. I did listen to some audiobooks, 2 being fantasy audiobooks. The first being A Court of Silver and Flames, which I believe, is that the 4th? I think it's considered the 4th in the ACOTAR series, because I think that Frost and Starlight or whatever is 3.5. But this one is all from the point of view of Nesta and Cassian. So if you follow ACOTAR, that's Feyre and Rhysand and Tamlin and Lucian and all those people. You're hearing these names. But this one is all about Nesta and Cassian and really getting through Nesta's mental health journey, her, PTSD, her needing to accept herself and love others and accept and embrace others' love for her. A lot of people, from what I've heard, either really love or hate this book, and it's what I've heard is like the difference between like being a Nesta and knowing a Nesta. And I really feel like I wouldn't say I like loved this one. It was a 3 stars for me. But I definitely liked it a lot better than the other ones because I can't stand Feyre. Like, I cannot stand her. And the more I read about Rhysand, I really didn't like him either. So I've always been a fan of Cassian. I think he is just very comical and just very, I've always been interested in what his story might be. And I don't feel like you get a lot of his story in this one. I mean, you get bits here and there, but it's really about Nesta. And I feel like it did a nice job. It gave a different tone than the other books. And I feel like it dove a lot deeper and it really helped understand Nesta more. Because in the other books, I feel like we just kind of push her aside because we're just like, oh, she's, a big bee, and we don't really care for that because we want everything to be happy and whimsical. And, in this one, we really understand the depth of her sorrow and her, I guess, breakdown of her childhood, her, becoming a woman, becoming Fae, and what that really did to her. And we are introduced to all these other female characters, and it really shows the strength and the endurance of the female mind and the depth of which we can really pull out bravery and strength. And it was really, I liked it in that sense. I felt it was really long, so that's why I really just gave it 3 stars. And because I just don't think these books are that great. I don't think they should get the hype that they're getting. But overall, it was a decent read, and I enjoyed getting to know Nesta a little bit more. I don't know if I'm going to continue with this series. I don't feel like I am really like gaining anything from reading them. I don't feel the story's that compelling. And truth be told, I could care less about Elaine. And I feel like she's the next one that the books are going to be about. And I couldn't be moved. So, anywho, that's Sarah J. Maas. Another Sarah J. Maas that I read because it came up on my Libby that it was ready. And this is another one of her series. And I hear that this one is much better. And that is Throne of Glass. So I read Throne of Glass via audiobook. This one is about a young woman who, I can't remember her name. I think it's like Selena or something like that. But then she has to go by a different name. I think it's like Lilith or Lillian or something like that. But she's an assassin, and a young one at that. She's 18 years old, right? So she's this world-renowned assassin. And she gets basically taken, and she's imprisoned in this really crazy war camp, or prison camp. And then she gets plucked out of there by the prince of this realm, and I can't remember his Dorian, and his like lieutenant guy or captain, I don't even know. See, this is how bad it is. It's like you read these books and you're just like, yeah, get to the point. And I can't remember his name, Caldeon or whatever. So anyways, these 2 dudes obviously like her because she's a female. And but anywho, she gets plucked out of this prison camp to fight in this big challenge to be the king's champion. And from what we understand of her point of view, the king is not a good king. Like, you don't want to be on his bad side or really his good side. He's just not a good ruler. And but what else can she do? So she's fighting for her freedom. And so she is going into this challenge. She pretty much knows she's going to win because she's, an assassin and she's amazing and she can do whatever, blah, blah, blah. So she trains and does this challenge. It's like a 13-week challenge. There's 26 people, and they start getting plucked off left and right by like unknown beings, like magical something bad. And so the story really progresses from there, and it ends in a way that like more is to come. And we all know this is a very lengthy series. I gave it 3 stars. It's a good start. No worries, there's no sex in this book, so if you're looking for a fantasy that doesn't involve that, I can't promise anything for the future books because I haven't gotten there yet, but this one very much revolving around the politics, the personalities of these different people. You know, there's a little bit of this love triangle, like whispers of a love triangle between these 3 people. But it's really, I don't really think it's going anywhere. I think it's just there because they're in each other's company, and it's, you know, the proximity is there. But overall, 3 stars. If you want to start a new series, you want to dabble in and see what it's about, I didn't think it was so bad. I'm interested. I'm going to continue on and see where this all goes. I did manage to get some middle grade read. I finally finished. It was taking me forever, 2 weeks to read The Red Pyramid by Riordan. And now, let me tell you, when I read the Percy Jackson series, I flew through it. Now, this was probably 15 years ago. I read that series a long time ago, and I flew through it. I was younger. My head was in a different space. Now trying to read this Red Pyramid, which is different. It's about Egyptian gods and theory and all that. And I just, oh my gosh, it took me 2 weeks. And I pretty much skim read the last like 25% of the book because I was not interested. And not that the book itself wasn't good. I feel like it was still written in the same tone that we see in Percy Jackson. But it was like I couldn't. And here's the thing, I'm just thinking now, I'm wondering if, so this story is written in a way that the 2 main characters, their POVs, they're like recording this as a message. So they're telling this story as a recording. So every once in a while they like interject with like, oh no, I know, I'm telling it my way. So for me as a reader, like I know like they're going to make it at the end of the story because obviously this is after the fact. So for me, I'm just like, okay, so none of this feels very like you're not jumping into something and going like, oh no, are they going to make it? You're not, because they are going to make it because they're recording this after the fact. So I think maybe that's in my head. I got too much wrapped into that. And I feel like a lot of kids could really like that because it's like, oh, this is a fun way to write this story. But to me, I was just like, well, there's nothing at stake here because we know they're going to make it through this whole book because this is a recording from after it all happened. So maybe that's why I was not very into it. So it's Carter and Sadie, and they get themselves into a whole heap of trouble because their dad basically awakens and unleashes a bunch of Egyptian gods, and they have to try to stop one that's a little bit evil. So there's that. They end up going through a bunch of different challenges and meeting a bunch of different like beasts and stuff like that. So fun, but I was just not into it. So I did give that 3 stars because it's well written and I think kids really love it. So I wasn't going to give it any lower than that. But for me, I was just like, can we just move on? Can we get through this book? So I did finish that. On the flip side, I read like a regular non-fantasy book for middle grade. It was called Free Lunch by Rex Ogle. And let me tell you, 4 stars. Loved this book. The dedication is so true. It says for not only kids who have free lunch, but all kids. And the point of that being, this book is such a good example of how to see someone, feel someone's other shoes. Like when I was a kid, I got free lunch. And I could totally relate to so many things that happened to this character. And the character's same name, Rex Ogle, in the book. And just about the embarrassment and the shame and like just being so worried that people were going to judge you and make fun of you because you had free lunch and because you were not, your parents were not, well endowed. This is about Rex. and his mother, she's a single mom. She does have a boyfriend, but they're just in and out of jobs. They don't have a lot of money. They don't have any money. He ends up getting free lunch at school, and the way that it's set up is not like it's set up today, and it's very similar to how it was when I was a kid. You had to like announce that you had free lunch in order for the like lunch lady to like check it off or to like mark it in the system. And it's so embarrassing. And a lot of times like you skipped lunch because you didn't want people to know, and like the cloud of shame that like hovered over you because of this. And you know, being an adult now, like obviously you think that wasn't a big deal, like it's such a small finite moment in your life, but as a kid it's such a huge thing. And now I know, like at school, like no one knows who has free lunch because it's all computerized. So you type in your number and boom, the computer takes care of it. So no one has to know anything. But back in the day, like you had to announce it. You were afraid. And a lot of times you waited until everyone was out of the line, or, you know, you tried to get there first or whatever it was. And so I totally get this. It's not all just about the free lunch, but it talks about, you know, their lives and just the hardships and just being a kid in that situation. If you are recommending this to your kids, I would mention there is child abuse in this. Not like descriptions of how it happens, but it's all alluded to. There's the aftermath of maybe bruises and whatnot. So do be cautious there. But overall, I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I felt like it was so relatable, and it's definitely one that I would be recommending for kids to understand that not everyone has what you have. And just understanding that it's good to, you know, give everyone the benefit of the doubt and whatnot. So really loved that book, was really happy to have read that. I listened to it in audio and it was great. It was a quick read, really nice. So 4 stars there. I did read several other books, like I mentioned before. If you read anything by Grace Goodwin, so this is like alien romance smut, KU has a ton available right now on their KU. So if you have the subscription, it's free to you. So jump over there and get that, because I don't know how long that's going to last. So I read a bunch of that because I had a bunch that I hadn't gotten to yet in her list of the Interstellar Bride series. So I was able to do that. Check that out on Goodreads. And then there was another smutty book that I read that was like, whoa, what am I reading? And then another one that I got 54% in and was like, DNF, this is garbage. I hardly ever write anything on Goodreads, and this one I did. I was like, this is garbage. Absolute garbage. So check my Goodreads for that. Other than that, so those are all the things that I have read. Jumping into this last week of March, I really want to finish all of my library books. So I checked out a bunch of books at the beginning of the month. You may have seen that at the end of my February, in my Friday reads and my wrap up. So I really need to finish those because I have not been concentrating on those. I don't know why. And I also need to get my book club book read. So Caddie Woodlawn will for sure get read this weekend, because our live discussion is Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, March 25th at 8 p.m. Central Time. So if you're interested in jumping in on that, you still have time to read, as I still have time to read. And we're going to discuss that on Tuesday. So that's this coming Tuesday, the 25th. I'm also, so as far as library books, I'd like to get The Evolution of Calpurnia Tate done. And then I want to reread my edition of Birchbark House so that I can read the second in that series, which is The Game of Silence. So this is Louise Erdrich. So that is where I am in reading, where I'm going. I want to finish all this in March so that April can be new, spring into some new books and whatnot. So that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at. Tell me in the comments, any of these books have you read? What middle grade books did you read this past month? Did you read any Irish reads for the Irish Readathon? Let me know. I'd love to discuss that. And until next week, I hope you're reading something fantastic, taking care, staying safe, and as always, you know how it goes. Happy reading!